Hi, my name is John Petty, and I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Growing Up in Flip Flops. The house I grew up in had been a model home in our town in the early 19 teens. And while we did have a little bit of land that went with it, and the house had been built in the old Florida style with high ceilings, valances above the doors, and lots of awnings around the house to keep it cool. The one thing that we didn't have was a swimming pool. Luckily, at the end of our block was a motel that had been probably built in the 1950s, and my mother was friends with the couple that owned it. They would allow my sister and I to come down and swim in the hotel swimming pool. It was an outdoor pool, and on especially hot days, or we could go down and swim in the pool. There weren't a whole lot of tourists in Florida in the summer, which was the hot time, which was the time that we would want to go in the pool. So during the summer months, we pretty much had free run of the pool, which was great. One other thing the hotel or motel had was a shuffleboard court. I grew up playing shuffleboard. Absolutely enjoyed it. To me, it's basically a game of strategy as well as skill, even though it's probably ridiculed as an old folks game. Every chance I could get, I was down at the motel playing shuffleboard, or at least practicing shuffleboard. I loved it. In later years, I took my son down to Florida and took him out as a young boy playing shuffleboard, and he enjoyed it as well as I do. That enjoyment of shuffleboard has continued into my adult life. In fact, here in Wisconsin, where I currently live, when we redid our driveway and had a new concrete driveway put in, I specifically went to the contractor and laid out a section of my driveway that was going to be a regulation shuffleboard court. In the county that I reside, it is the only shuffleboard court which I'm aware of. There is a park in a neighboring county that does have, probably 5 shuffleboard courts. But my driveway is a regulation shuffleboard court. And yes, I have the discs and I have the cues. That's what the pushing sticks are called. I have a set of cues so I can go out and play shuffleboard in my driveway when the weather is amenable here in Wisconsin. But anyway, one other thing that the motel had that was completely different, I think, than today, or at least an opportunity that's different than today, was they had a soda machine that had glass bottles and you could go and pull them out. I would help sometimes the owners of the motel fill up the machine, that would go back into their storage room and carry out cases of Coca-Cola or Sprite, whatever, and refill the machine. And it was refrigerated, so you pulled a cold bottle of Coca-Cola out of this machine. At that time, there was no way that my mother was going to buy soda and have it in our house. So we did not grow up with Cokes or Pepsis or anything laying around the house. Having a bottle of Coke was a special treat, and it was something that I could go down, help the people that owned the motel fill the pop machine, and they'd probably say, "Hey, John, thank you. Why don't you take a pop?" That was a real special treat. It was not like, just in now just going in the refrigerator and getting this. So probably that's one of the things that back in that day, there wasn't a whole lot of problem with obesity that you see today because simply the sugary soft drinks were not available. But it was fascinating that, you know, shuffleboard and pool literally two houses down from us and could go and play that. While some of the kids in newer developments in the hometown had pools at their house, they didn't have shuffleboard, and I had them both. So that was a neat thing. One other kind of a crazy story, my mother was friends with another couple that owned a motel, and occasionally we would go visit them. And the strange thing about this was they had, for lack of a better term, an apartment behind the motel office, and that's where they lived, right behind the office. So that was their place. And when we would go over to visit them, we would go into their living space at this motel behind the front desk counter. The strange thing about this was this lady was absolutely, I mean, she couldn't have weighed 100 pounds that was there, that was a friend of my mother. And she was a chain smoker. She had the Venetian blinds for the place where they lived just sealed shut, and she had a window air conditioner that was set on frigid. She had a very, very gravelly voice. She was a chain smoker. So we would walk in to this living area, and it was just smoke filled with and absolutely frigid from coming from outside in the Florida heat. The wild thing about this thing was, I remember when we would go to visit her, the first word she would say to my sister and I as soon as we entered the room, and I'll sort of imitate her voice, was, "Hey kids, you kids want a Coca-Cola?" And we would look at my mother, to get permission. She'd say, "Yes, you can go get one." And the lady was, "Well, kids, go to the refrigerator and get yourself a Coca-Cola." We would go to her refrigerator in the kitchen of this little efficiency apartment and open up the refrigerator door. There was nothing but pony-size bottles of Coca-Cola in this refrigerator. She didn't have anything else in there. I don't know if that's what she subsisted on or what, but it was always this wild thing. But we knew, my sister and I knew when my mother announced that we were going to go visit her friend over at this other motel, that my sister and I were going to be able to get a Coke that day because the lady would always ask us. It was just an interesting situation. I remember that gravelly voice, that smoke-filled room, and an absolutely frigid room coming out of the Florida heat. Just memories, but it just fun how some of the things that growing up still linger with you, that my affinity and enjoyment of the game of shuffleboard has lasted all the way into these years, even to the point of me having a shuffleboard court installed in my driveway. Thank you again. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.